Oh, I look. Ooh, ooh, yikes. I look a little tough, girl gang. There's no one on. Just me. It's okay. Bye, Haley. What's up? I didn't realize that my shower was gonna make me look deathly, but for some reason I do. Um, I think we're reading chapters 10 and 11 today. Crystal, I would love to read you a bedtime story, my love. Give me 1 second and then I will. I'm just writing the little thingy. I'm 60% sure we're doing 10 and 11. Yeah. Last time we did, was the Smythe Smith musical, which was lit, and then I honestly do not remember what else happened because I've been reading fan fiction in the interim, so I don't want to be like, oh, and then this happened, and then y'all be like, babe, that is not canon at all. Because I do that. I do that, and I do that on the podcast too, is the funny part. Like, full, I say it with my full chest that something's canon in it. It often is not. But that just means we have so many good authors in the fandom that their work is so great that I'm like, yeah, that happened. Yeah, Colin did wipe the eclair cream off of Penn's chest with his finger and then eat it. Like, yeah, that was canon. That was 100. That happened. Actually, chapter 6, if you remember. No, that didn't happen. But hey, if it did, I'm not mad. I can't write today, so I'm sorry this is taking longer. Chapter 10 and chapter 11. It's not centered, but guess what? Whoever is, like, whatever. Like, I'm trying. I'm trying my best. No, I don't think anyone cares, and I think half the time I end up like plopping this down and not even using it. But I like to try. I sure do like to try. But as soon as I flip this and light my man candle, because we know that is pertinent to a good storytelling. I've cried over some fics. That is so valid, Frankie. Colin is a hungry boy, and I love that about him. And I love even more that Mr. Luke Newton loves that about him. I'm drinking a Dr. Pepper. I'm reusing the McDonald's cup. It was actually a canned Dr. Pepper. I'm lighting my hot man candle. Not sponsored, but sponsored by my heart. It's from Bellevier Candles. It's a local candle company where I'm from. Don't Google where I'm from, but Bellevier Candles. This is the Oak Moss and Amber scent, aka the Hot Man scent, aka the candle that I was walking through the farmer's market and said, I want a candle that smells like a hot man. And I was called over by a vendor and she said, try this out. And I said, that's the one. So anytime we read about hot men, we must simply light the hot man candle, aka Luke Newton scent. Luke Newton. I've heard whispers that he uses the same cologne as my dad, and I hate that because my dad overdoes the cologne. Don't love. But it's okay. I'll get over it. I'll cope. Luke Newton Kiss Me Challenge. Frankie, you are the realist. You're so real. Luke Newton, don't perceive me challenge because it didn't work out last time. Hold on, let me. You guys, I was crocheting because I truly am older than my years. Okay, so we're reading chapter 10 and 11, and you couldn't pay me to tell you what happens in these chapters, but I guess we'll find out. Oh my god, yeah. The new cover, we're gonna be feral. If it's anything I dream of, which it's not gonna be because my dreams are usually a little, but, you know, doesn't hurt to hope, doesn't hurt to wish, doesn't hurt to dream. Okay, chapter, chapter, chapter 10. Dear reader, it is with a surprisingly sentimental heart that I write these words. After 11 years of chronicling the lives and times of the beau monde, this author is putting down her pen. Although Lady Danbury's challenge was surely the catalyst for the retirement, in truth, the blame cannot be placed entirely upon the Countess's shoulders. The column has grown wearisome as of late, less fulfilling to write, and perhaps less entertaining to read. This author needs a change. It is not so difficult to fathom. 11 years is a long time. In truth, the recent renewal of interest in this author's identity has grown disturbing. Friends are turning against friends, brothers against sisters, and all in the futile attempt to solve an unsolvable secret. Furthermore, the sleuthing of the ton has grown downright dangerous. Last week it was Lady Blackwood's twisted ankle. This week's injury apparently belongs to Hyacinth Bridgerton, who was slightly hurt at Saturday's soiree held at the London home of Lord and Lady Riverdale. It has not escaped this author's notice that Lord Riverdale is Lady Danbury's nephew. Miss Hyacinth must have suspected someone in attendance, because she sustained her injuries while falling into the library after the door was opened while she had her ear pressed up to the wood, listening at doors, chasing down delivery boys. And these are only the tidbits that have reached this author's ears. What has London society come to? This author assures you, dear reader, that she never once listened at a door in all 11 years of her career. All gossip in this column was come by fairly, with no tools or tricks other than keen eyes and ears. I bid you au revoir, London. It has been a pleasure to serve you. Lady Whistledown Society Papers, 19th of April, 1824. So again, it's been like 15 days, 15 to 17 days since the start of Colin being back, Colin talking to Penelope, Colin being like, wait, Pen has something going on. Wait, why are Pen's eyes kind of pretty? Wait, hold on. So let's remember that. 12 years, and then all of a sudden in 15 days. Ain't that a dream? Okay. It was not It was, not surprisingly, the talk of the Macclesfield ball. Lady Whistledown has retired. Can you believe it? What will I read with my breakfast? How will I know what's happening if I miss a party? We'll never find out who she is now. Lady Whistledown has retired. One woman fainted, nearly cracking her head against the side of a table as she slumped graciously to the floor. Apparently, she had not read that morning's column, and thus heard the news for the first time right there at the Macclesfield ball. She was revived by smelling salts, and then quickly swooned again. She's a faker, Hyacinth Bridgerton muttered to Felicity Featherington as they stood in a small group with the Dowager Lady Bridgerton and Penelope. Penelope was officially attending as Felicity's chaperone due to her mother's decision to remain home with an upset stomach. The first faint was real, Hyacinth explained. Anyone could tell by that clumsy way she fell, but this? Her hand flicked toward the lady on the floor with a gesture of disgust. No one swoons like a ballet dancer, not even ballet dancers. Penelope had overheard the entire conversation, as Hyacinth was directly to her left, and so she murmured, "Have you ever swooned?" All the while keeping her eyes on the unfortunate woman, who was now coming awake with a delicate fluttering of eyelashes and as the smelling salts were once again wafted under her nose. "Absolutely not," Hyacinth replied, but with no small measure of pride. "Swoons are for the tender-hearted and foolish," she added. And if Lady Whistledown were still writing, mark my words, she would say the exact same thing in her next column. Alas, there are no words to mark any more, Felicity answered with a sad sigh. Lady Bridgerton agreed. It's the end of an era, she said. I feel quite barefoot without her. Well, it's not as if we've had to go more than 18 hours without her yet, Penelope felt compelled to point out. We did receive a column this morning. What is there yet to feel barefoot about? It's the principle of it, Lady Bridgerton said with a sigh. If this were an ordinary Monday, I would know that I'd receive a new report on Wednesday. But now, Felicity actually sniffled. Now we're lost, she said. Penelope turned to her sister in disbelief. Surely you're being a little melodramatic. Felicity's overblown shrug was worthy of the stage. Am I? Am I? Hyacinth gave her a sympathetic pat on the back. I don't think you are, Felicity. I feel precisely the same way. It's only a gossip column, Penelope said, looking around for any sign of sanity in her companions. Surely they realized that the world was not drawing to a close just because Lady Whistledown had decided to end her career. You're right, of course, Lady Bridgerton said, jutting her chin out and pursing her lips in a manner that was probably supposed to convey an air of practicality. Thank you for being the voice of reason for our little party. But then she seemed to deflate slightly, and she said, But I must admit, I've grown rather used to having her around, whoever she is. Penelope decided that it was well past time to change the topic. Where is Eloise this evening? Ill, I'm afraid. A headache, Lady Bridgerton said, small frown of worry creasing her otherwise unlined face. Queen has Botox. I'm sorry. Ill, I'm afraid. A headache, Lady Bridgerton said, small frowns of worry creasing her otherwise unlined face. She hasn't been feeling the thing for almost a week now. I'm starting to grow concerned about her. Penelope had been staring rather aimlessly at the sconce on the wall, but her attention was immediately brought back to Lady Bridgerton. Nothing serious, I hope. It's nothing serious, Hyacinth answered before her mother could even open her mouth. Eloise never gets sick. Which is precisely why I'm worried, Lady Bridgerton said. She hasn't been eating very well. That's not true, Hyacinth said. Just this afternoon, Wickham brought up a very heavy tray, scones and eggs, and I think I smelled gammon steak. She gave an arch look to no one in particular. And when Eloise left the tray out in the hall, it was completely empty. Hyacinth Bridgerton, Penelope decided, had a surprisingly good eye for detail. She's been in a bad mood, Hyacinth continued, since she quarreled with Colin. She quarreled with Colin? Penelope asked, an awful feeling beginning to roil her stomach. When? When? Sometime last week, Hyacinth said. When? Penelope wanted to scream, but surely it would look odd if she demanded an exact day. Was it Friday? Was it? Penelope would always remember her first, and most probably only, kiss had occurred on a Friday. She was strange that way. She always remembered the days of the week. She'd met Colin on a Monday. She kissed him on a Friday. 12 years later. She sighed. It seemed fairly pathetic. Is something wrong, Penelope? Lady Bridgerton asked. Hold on. I immediately know that someone in the chat is going to be a problem, so I'm just going to turn off my notifications really quick. Okay. Sorry. Is something wrong, Penelope? Lady Bridgerton asked. Penelope looked at Eloise's mother. Her blue eyes were kind and filled with concern, and there was something about the way she tilted her head to the side that made Penelope want to cry. She was getting far too emotional these days, crying over the tilt of a head. I'm fine, she said, hoping that her smile looked true. I'm just worried about Eloise. Hyacinth snorted. Penelope decided she needed to make her escape. All these Bridgertons, well, two of them anyway, were making her think of Colin. which wasn't anything she hadn't been doing nearly every minute of the day for the past 3 days. But at least that had been in private, where she could sigh and moan and grumble at her heart's content. But this must but this must have been her lucky night, because just then she heard Lady Danbury barking her name. What was her world coming to that she considered herself lucky to be trapped in the corner with London's most acerbic tongue? But Lady Danbury would provide the perfect excuse to leave her current little quartet of ladies, and besides, she was coming to realize that, in a very odd way, she rather liked Lady Danbury. "Miss Featherington! Miss Featherington!" Felicity instantly took a step away. "I think she means you," she whispered urgently. "Of course she means me," Penelope said, with a touch of hauteur. "I consider Lady Danbury a cherished friend." Felicity's eyes bugged out. "You do?" "Miss Featherington," Lady Danbury said, thumping her cane an inch away from Penelope's foot as soon as she reached her side. "Not you," she said to Felicity, even though Felicity had done nothing more than smile politely as the Countess had approached. "You," she said to Penelope. Good evening, Lady Danbury," Penelope said, which she considered an admirable number of words under the circumstances. "I've been looking for you all evening," Lady D announced. Penelope found that a trifle surprising. "You have?" "Yes. I want to talk to you about that Whistledown woman's last column." "Me?" "Yes, you," Lady Danbury grumbled. "I'd be happy to talk with someone else if I could find a body with more than half a brain." Penelope choked on the beginnings of laughter as she motioned to her companions. I assure you that Lady Bridgerton was furiously shaking her head. "She's too busy trying to get that oversized brood of hers married off," Lady Danbury announced. "Can't be expected to know how to conduct a decent conversation these days." Penelope stole a frantic glance over at Lady Bridgerton to see if she was upset by the insult. After all, she had been trying to marry off her oversized brood for a decade now. But Lady Bridgerton didn't look the least bit upset. In fact, she appeared to be stifling laughter. Stifling laughter and inching away, taking Hyacinth and Felicity with her. Sneaky little traitors. Ah well, Penelope shouldn't complain. She wanted an escape from the Bridgertons, hadn't she? But she didn't particularly enjoy having Felicity and Hyacinth think they'd somehow pulled one over on her. "They're gone now," Lady Danbury cackled. "And a good thing, too. Those two gels haven't an intelligent thing to say between them." "Oh, no, that isn't true," Penelope felt compelled to protest. "Felicity and Hyacinth are both very bright." "I never said they weren't smart," Lady D replied acidly. "Just that they haven't an intelligent thing to say. But don't worry," she added, giving Penelope a reassuring? Whoever heard of Lady Danbury being reassuring? Pat on the arm. "It's not their fault that their conversation is useless. They'll grow out of it. People are like fine wines. If they start off good, they only get better with age." Penelope hadn't actually been Penelope had actually been glancing slightly to the right of Lady Danbury's face, peering over her shoulder at a man who she thought might be Colin, but wasn't. But this brought her attention right back to where the Countess wanted it. "Fine wines?" Penelope echoed. And here I thought you weren't listening." "No, of course I was listening." Penelope felt her lips tugging into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I was just distracted." "Looking for that Bridgerton boy, no doubt." Penelope gasped. I gasped too. "Oh, don't look so shocked. It's written all over your face. I'm just surprised he hasn't noticed." "I imagine he has," Penelope mumbled. "Has he? Lady Danbury frowned, the corners of her mouth spilling into long vertical wrinkles on either side of her chin. "Doesn't speak well of him that he hasn't done anything about it." Penelope's heart ached. There was something oddly sweet about the old lady's faith in her, as if men like Colin fell in love with women like Penelope on a regular basis. Penelope had to beg him to kiss her, for heaven's sake. And look how that had ended up. He'd left the house in a fit of a temper, and they hadn't spoken for 3 days. "Well, don't worry over him," Lady Danbury said quite suddenly. We'll find you someone else. Now, pause for just 1 second. If they are going to use the, you know, Penn and Danbury storyline, if they're going to be like, Danbury has like a part in Penn's story, this would be the perfect time to introduce a suitor like, you know, Debling. Um, Obviously, we know Debling's not in the book, but hey, this would be a good spot. I'm going to go back a few sentences. Well, don't worry over him, Lady Danbury said, quite suddenly. We'll find you someone else. Penelope delicately cleared her throat. Lady Danbury, have you made me your project? The old lady beamed, her smile a bright and glowing streak in her wrinkled face. Of course! I'm surprised it has taken you so long to figure it out. But why? Penelope asked, truly unable to fathom it. Lady Danbury sighed. The sound wasn't sad, more wistful, really. Would you mind if we sat down for a spell? These old bones aren't what they used to be. Of course, Penelope said quickly, feeling terrible that she'd never once considered Lady Danbury's age as they stood there in the stuffy ballroom. But the Countess was so vibrant, it was difficult to imagine her ailing or weak. Here we are, Penelope said, taking her arm and leading her to a nearby chair. Once Lady Danbury was settled, Penelope took a seat beside her. Are you more comfortable now? Would you like something to drink? Lady Danbury nodded gratefully, and Penn signaled to a footman to bring over 2 glasses of lemonade, said she didn't want to leave the Countess while she was looking so pale. I'm not as young as I used to be, Lady Danbury told her, once the footman had hied off to the refreshment table. None of us are, Penelope replied. It could have been a flip comment, but it was spoken with wry warmth, and somehow Penelope thought that Lady Danbury would appreciate the sentiment. She was right. Lady D chuckled and sent Penelope an appreciative glance before saying, The older I get, the more I realize that most of the people in this world are fools. You're only just figuring that out now? Penelope asked, not to mock, but rather because, given Lady Danbury's usual demeanor, it was difficult to believe that she hadn't reached that conclusion years ago. Lady Danbury laughed heartily. No, sometimes I think I knew that before I was born. What I'm realizing now is that it's time I did something about it. What do you mean? I couldn't care less what happens to the fools of this world, but the people like you. Lacking a handkerchief, she dabbed at her eyes with her fingers. Well, I'd like to see you settled. For several seconds, Penelope did nothing but stare at her. Lady Danbury, she said carefully, I very much appreciate the gesture and the sentiment, but you must know that I'm not your responsibility. Of course I know that, Lady Danbury scoffed. Have no fear. I feel no responsibility to you. If I did, this wouldn't be half so much fun. Penelope knew she sounded the veriest ninny, but all she could think to say was, I don't understand. Lady Danbury held silent while the footman returned with their lemonade, then began speaking. Someone outside my door is being loud, and it's making me furious. I don't know if you can hear the music. Oh, if someone's knocking on my door right now, I'm gonna absolutely lose it. Hold on. Whatever. They'll go away. I'm not entertaining suitors at the moment. I'm reading my book aloud, actually. Sorry. Uh, oh. But you must know that I'm not your responsibility. Of course I know that, Lady Danbury scoffed. Have no fear. I feel no responsibility to you. If I did, this wouldn't be half so much fun. Penelope knew she sounded the veriest ninny, but all she could think to say was, I don't understand. Lady Danbury held silent while the footman returned with their lemonade. and began speaking when she had taken several small sips. "I like you, Miss Featherington. I don't like a lot of people. I don't know what voice I'm doing. I don't like a lot of people. It's as simple as that. And if I want to, and I want to see you happy." "But I am happy," Penelope said, more out of reflex than anything else. Lady Danbury raised one arrogant brow, an expression that she did to perfection. "Are you?" she murmured. Was she? What did it mean that she had to stop and think about the answer? She wasn't unhappy, of that she was sure. She had wonderful friends and a true confidant in her younger sister Felicity, and if her mother and older sisters weren't women she'd have chosen as close friends, well, she still loved them, and she knew they loved her. Hers wasn't such a bad lot. Her life lacked drama and excitement, but she was content. But contentment wasn't the same thing as happiness, and she felt a sharp, stabbing pain in her chest as she realized that she could not answer Lady Danbury's softly worded question in the affirmative. "I've raised my family," Lady Danbury said. "4 children, and they're all married well. I've even found a bride for my nephew, who, truth be told," she leaned in and whispered the last 3 words, giving Penelope the impression that she was about to divulge a state secret. "I like better than my oh." Who, truth be told, she leaned in, whispering the last 3 words, giving Penelope the impression that she was about to divulge a state secret. "I like better than my own children." Penelope couldn't help but smile. Lady Danbury looked so furtive, so naughty. It was rather cute, actually. "It may surprise you," Lady Danbury continued, "but by nature I'm a bit of a meddler." Penelope kept her expression scrupulously even. "I find myself at loose ends," Lady Danbury said, holding up her hands as if in surrender. "I'd like to see one last person happily settled before I go." "Don't talk that way, Lady Danbury," Penelope said impulsively, reaching out and taking her hand. She gave it a little squeeze. "You'll outlive us all, I'm certain." "Don't be silly," Lady Danbury's tone was dismissive, but she made no move to remove her hand from Penelope's grasp. "I'm not being depressive," she added. "I'm just realistic. I've passed 70 years of age, and I'm not going to tell you how many years ago that was. I haven't much time left in this world, and that doesn't bother me one bit." Penelope hoped she would be able to face her own mortality with the same equanimity. "But I like you, Miss Featherington. You remind me of myself. You're not afraid to speak your mind." Penelope could only look at her in shock. She'd spent the last 10 years of her life never quite saying what she wanted to say. With people she knew well, she was open and honest and even sometimes a little funny, but amongst strangers her tongue was quite firmly tied. She remembered a masquerade ball she'd once attended. She'd attended many masquerade balls, actually, but this one had been unique because she'd actually found a costume. Nothing special, just a gown styled as if it was from the 1600s, in which she'd felt her identity was hidden. It had probably been the mask. It was overly large and covered almost all of her face. She had felt transformed, suddenly free of the burden of being Penelope Featherington. She felt a new personality come to the fore. It wasn't as if she had been putting on false airs. Rather, it was more like her true self, the one she didn't know how to show to anyone she didn't know well, had finally broken loose. She'd laughed, she'd joked, she'd even flirted, and she'd sworn that the following night, when the costumes were all put away and she was once again attired in her finest evening dress, she'd remembered how to be herself. But it hadn't happened. She'd arrived at the ball, and she'd nodded and smiled politely and once again found herself standing near the perimeter of the room, quite literally a wallflower. It seemed that being Penelope Featherington meant something. Her lot had been cast years ago, during that first awful season when her mother had insisted she make her debut even though Penelope had begged otherwise. The pudgy girl, the awkward girl, the one always dressed in colors that didn't suit her. It didn't matter that she'd slimmed down and grown graceful and finally thrown out all of her yellow dresses. In this world, the world of London society and the ton, she would always be the same old Penelope Featherington. It was her own fault just as much as it was anyone else's. A vicious cycle, really. Every time Penelope stepped into a ballroom and she saw all those people who had known her for so long, she'd felt herself folding up inside, turning into the shy, awkward girl of years gone past, rather than the self-assured woman she'd like to think she'd become, at least in her heart. Miss Featherington? Lady Danbury's soft and surprisingly gentle voice. Is something wrong? Penelope knew she took longer than she should have to reply, but somehow she needed a few seconds to find her voice. I don't think I know how to speak my mind, she finally said, turning to look at Lady Danbury, only as she uttered the final word of the sentence. I never know what to say to people. You know what to say to me. You're different. Lady Danbury threw her head back and laughed. If ever there was an understatement. Oh, Penelope, I hope you don't mind if I call you by your given name. If you can speak your mind to me, you can speak it to anyone. Half the grown men in this room run cowering into corners the moment they see me coming. They just don't know you, Penelope said, patting her on the hand. And they don't know you either, Lady Danbury quite pointedly replied. No, Penelope said, a touch of resignation in her voice. They don't. I'd say it was their loss. But that would be rather cavalier of me, Lady Danbury said. Not to them, but to you, because as often as I call them all fools, and I do call them fools often, as I'm sure you know, some of them are actually rather decent people, and it's a crime they haven't gotten to know you. I, hmm, I wonder what's going on. Penelope found herself unaccountably sitting up a little straighter. She asked Lady Danbury, What do you mean? But it was clear that something was afoot. People were whispering and motioning to the small dais where the musicians were seated. You there, Lady Danbury said, poking her cane into the hip of a nearby gentleman. What's going on? Cressida Tombly wants to make some sort of announcement, he said, then quickly stepped away, presumably to avoid further conversation with Lady Danbury or her cane. I hate Cressida Tombly, Penelope muttered. Lady Danbury choked on a bit of laughter. And you say you don't know how to speak your mind. Don't keep me in suspense. Why do you detest her so? Penelope shrugged. She's always behaved quite badly toward me. Lady Danbury nodded knowingly. All bullies have a favorite victim. It's not so bad now, Penelope said. But back when we were both out, when she was still Cressida Cowper, she never could resist the chance to torment me, and people, well, she shook her head. Never mind. No, please, Lady Danbury said. Do go on. Penelope sighed. It's nothing really, just that I've noticed that people don't often rush to another's defense. Cressida was popular, at least with a certain set, and she was rather frightening to the other girls our age. No one dared go against her. Well, almost no one. That got Lady Danbury's attention. Who was your champion, Penelope? Champions, really, Penelope replied. The Bridgertons always came to my aid. Anthony Bridgerton once gave her the cut direct and took me in to dinner, and her voice rose with remembered excitement. He really shouldn't have done so. It was a formal dinner party, and he was supposed to escort in some I can't say that word. He was supposed to escort in some marchioness, I think. She sighed, treasuring the memory. It was lovely. He's a good man, that Anthony Bridgerton. Penelope nodded. His wife told me that that was the day she fell in love with him, when she saw him being my hero. Lady Danbury smiled. And has the younger Mr. Bridgerton ever rushed to your aid? Colin, you mean? Penelope didn't even wait for Lady Danbury to nod before adding, "Of course, although never with quite so much drama. But I must say, as nice as it is that the Bridgertons are so supportive—" "What is it, Penelope?" Lady Danbury asked. Penelope sighed again. "It seems a night for sighs. I just wish they didn't have to defend me so often. I think I could defend my— You'd think I could defend myself, or at least comport myself in such a manner that no defending was necessary." Lady Danbury patted her hand. "I think you get on a great— I think you— I'm struggling, I'm very sorry. I think you get on a great deal better than you think you do. And as for that Cressida Twombly—" Lady Danbury's face soured with distaste. "Well, she got her just deserts, if you ask me. Although," she added sharply, "people don't ask me as often as they should." Penelope could not quite suppress a little snort of laughter. "Look, look where she is now," Lady Danbury said sharply. "Widowed and without even a fortune to show for it. She married that old lecher Horace Twombly, and it turned out that he managed to fool everyone into thinking that he had money. Now she has nothing but fading good looks." Honesty compelled Penelope to say, "She is still quite attractive." "Hm. If you like flashy women—" Lady Danbury's eyes narrowed. "There is something far too obvious about that woman." Penelope looked toward the dais where Cressida was waiting, standing there with a surprising amount of patience while the ballroom quieted down. "I wonder what she's going to say." "Nothing that could possibly interest me," Lady Danbury retorted. Oh." She stopped, and then her lips— "Oh." And then her lips curved into the oddest of expressions, a little bit frown, a little bit smile. "What is it?" Penelope asked. She craned her neck to try and see Lady Danbury's line of vision, but a rather portly gentleman was blocking her way. "Your Mr Bridgerton is approaching," Lady Danbury said, with a smile edging out the frown. "And he looks quite determined." Penelope immediately twisted her head around. "For the love of God, girl, don't look!" Lady Danbury exclaimed, jamming her elbow into Penelope's upper arm. "He'll know you're interested." "I don't think there's much of a chance he hasn't figured that out already," Penelope mumbled. But then there he was, standing splendidly in front of her, looking like some handsome god, deigning to grace earth with his presence. "Lady Danbury," he said, executing a smooth and graceful bow. "Miss Featherington." "Mr Bridgerton," Lady Danbury said. "How nice to see you." Colin looked to Penelope. "Mr Bridgerton," she murmured, not knowing what else to say. What did one say to a man who one had recently kissed? Penelope certainly had no experience in that area, not to mention the added complication of his storming out of the house once they were through. "I'd hoped," Colin began, then stopped and frowned, looking toward the dais. "What is everyone looking at?" "Cressida Twombly has some sort of announcement," Lady Danbury said. Colin's face slid into a vaguely annoyed frown. "Can't imagine what she has to say that I'd want to listen to," he muttered. Penelope couldn't help but grin. Cressida Twombly was considered a lecher in society, a leader in society, or at least she had been when she'd been young and unmarried, but the Bridgertons had never liked her, and somehow that always made Penelope feel a little bit better. Just when the trumpet blared and the room fell silent as everyone turned their attention to the Earl of Macclesfield, who was standing on the dais next to Cressida, looking vaguely uncomfortable with all the attention. Penelope smiled. She'd been told the Earl had once been a terrible rake, but now he was a rather scholarly sort, devoted to his family. He was still handsome enough to be a rake, though, almost as handsome as Colin. But only almost. Penelope knew she was biased, but it was difficult to imagine any creature quite as magnetically good-looking as Colin when he was smiling. "Good evening," the Earl said loudly. "Good evening to you," came a drunken shout from the back of the room. The Earl gave a good-natured nod, and a tolerant half-smile playing along his lips. "My, esteemed guest here," he motioned to Cressida, "would like to make an announcement, so if you would all give your attention to the lady beside me, I give you Lady Twombly." A low ripple of whispers spread across the room as Cressida stepped forward, nodding regally at the crowd. She waited for the room to fall into stark silence, and then she said, "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for thank you so much for taking time out of your festivities to lend me your attention." "Hurry up with it!" someone shouted, probably the same person who had yelled good evening to the Earl. Cressida ignored the interruption. "I have come to the conclusion that I can no longer continue the deception that has ruled my life for the last 11 years. The ballroom was rocked with a low buzz of whispers. Everyone knew what she was going to say, and yet no one could believe it was actually true. "Therefore," Cressida continued, her voice growing in volume, "I have decided to reveal my secret. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Lady Whistledown." End of chapter 10. Are you? Are you? I know in the book we don't know the truth yet, but are you? If Cressida Twombly, Cressida Cowper has no haters, I'm dead. I'm well and truly dead. So go ahead and write that down. But yeah, like you, and she thought she'd get away with it. Like you and your meddling kids and your little dog too. Like she really thought she like did something there. I'll scream if we get a your Mr. Bridgerton is approaching in season 3. I would eat it up. And that is when I'm like, yeah, name the first kid Agatha. Like I'm in. Like, yes. I wonder if the Featherington cousin of season 3 will be Felicity. Probably not, but a thought. I am a Felicity truther. Like, I am a fan of Miss Felicity Featherington. Like, where is she? And where is she? Because I miss her. Why isn't she here? Why wasn't she written in? I know we needed Penn to be like forgotten final child moment, but like, I don't know. Whatever. Uh, all right, anyone thoughts on that before we move on to chapter 11, or should we just keep on reading? Keep on trucking? Question mark, question mark, question mark, yes? Alright, well, no one's saying anything. So, I'm just gonna keep going. You guys, first chapter without a Lady Whistledown to start with. It's honestly hard to keep these, like, voices I'm doing in... keep track. I don't remember what voices I'm doing for people. I don't think it really matters. Okay. Okay, Crystal, you're not sleeping yet. Do I need to, like, talk in, like, softer tones to, like, help you go to sleep? Think Cressida will do this on the show? I think if she does, then she's stupid because I think the show has like way higher stakes for being Lady Whistledown because like the Queen is looking for her. The Queen threatened Eloise. Like the Queen doesn't exist in the book, so stop. I keep forgetting this is live. I'm so relaxed. Yes, this is live. That's why I can. That's why I stop every so often because I can't pronounce a word. Um, I'm trying my best. Uh, I think if Cressida like makes this big announcement, like, "Oh, I'm Lady Whistledown," and nothing has changed in the tone, like the Queen is still looking for Lady Whistledown, I think she's dumb because there's much higher stakes to being Lady Whistledown in the show world than there is in the book world. I could see her possibly still blackmailing Penn, but I think it depends what else is happening in the show because I think if we add like a blackmail plot, even though it oh that's a spoiler, uh I think if we add like a lot of the Cressida plot into the show, it's going to be like really busy just based on things already happening. I think it'll be a second parter. So I think the suitors are going to be part 1. That's the main issue in part 1, and then part 2, it's going to be like Lady Whistledown and possibly Cressida, and if there's any blackmail. One of the episodes is titled TikTok, and I'm like, well, that sounds like they have like a deadline for something. So that's interesting. Okay, I'm going to go into Colin's perspective. I hope we get more of that because the show doesn't really focus on it. Yeah, I really want them to just flesh out Colin as a character, whether it's like from his perspective or just showing him like not with his sibling or not with Penn, just like doing his own thing. I guess that's his perspective, but I definitely want them to flesh him out as a character. Okay, I'm gonna read chapter 11. Wait, is this the chapter? Hold on. Okay, it's not the chapter. It's not the chapter. Ooh, chapter 12 is. Hold on. Okay. So I think. So I'm going to read chapter 11. So, okay, so this is why. This is why I'm saying I think we should end on. I haven't read it yet, but this is why I'm saying I think we should end on chapter 11 tonight. This is the night before. Yes, Nanny. Chapter 12 and 13 are the chapters we want to read. So this is like leaving the ball. Chapter 12 is like the build up. Chapter 13 is the one we want, and I cannot read. I cannot read chapters like 12, 13, and 14 tonight. Because I started 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That's like too many. And I just won't be able to keep it together. But what day is it? I can probably go live tomorrow and we'll do 13 or we'll do 12 and 13 at least. 12, 13, 14 maybe. But we'll do chapter 11 now. And Crystal, this is your last chance to fall asleep, my love. Okay. So the next live is going to be the good one. It's going to be the one where you want to set your alarms because that's the carriage. The carriage is not tonight. It's going to be tomorrow. Okay. Chapter 11. Colin couldn't remember the last time he'd entered a ballroom with quite so much apprehension. The last few days had not been among his best. He had been in a bad mood, which had only been worsened by the fact that he was rather renowned for his good humor, which meant that everyone had felt compelled to comment on his foul disposition. There was nothing worse for a bad mood than being subjected to constant queries of, "Why are you in such a bad mood?" His family had stopped asking after he'd actually snarled at Hyacinth when she'd asked him to accompany her to the theater the following week. Colin hadn't even been aware that he knew how to snarl. He was going to have to apologize to Hyacinth, which was going to be a chore, since Hyacinth never accepted apologies gracefully, at least not those that came from fellow Bridgertons. But Hyacinth was the least of his problems, Colin groaned. His sister wasn't the only person who deserved his apology, and that's why his heart was beating at this strange, nervous, and completely unprecedented rapidity as he entered the Macclesfield ballroom. Penelope would be here. He knew she'd be here because she'd always attended the major balls, even if she was now most often doing so as her sister's chaperone. There was something quite humbling in feeling nervous about seeing Penelope. Penelope was Penelope. It was almost as if she'd always been there, smiling politely at the perimeter of a ballroom, and he'd taken her for granted, in a way. Some things didn't change, and Penelope was one of them. Except she had changed. Colin didn't know when it had happened, or even if anyone other than himself had noticed it, but Penelope Featherington was not the same woman he used to know. Or maybe she was, and he had changed, which made him feel even worse. Because if that was the case, then Penelope had been interesting and lovely and kissable years ago, and he hadn't the maturity to notice. No, better to think that Penelope had changed. Colin had never been a great fan of self-flagellation. Whatever the case, he needed to make his apology, and he needed to do it soon. He had to apologize for the kiss, because she was a lady and he was, most of the time at least, a gentleman. And he had to apologize for behaving like a raving idiot afterward, because it was simply the right thing to do. God only knew what Penelope thought he'd thought of her now. It wasn't difficult to find her once he'd entered the ballroom. He didn't bother to look among the dancing couples, which angered him. Why didn't the other men think to ask her to dance? Rather, he found himself he focused his attention along the walls, and sure enough, there she was, seated on a long bench next to, oh God, Lady Danbury. Well, there was nothing else to do but walk right up. The way Penelope and the old busybody were clutching each other's hands, he couldn't expect Lady Danbury to disappear any time soon. When he reached the pair of ladies, he turned first to Lady Danbury and swept into an elegant bow. Lady Danbury, he said, before turning his attention to Penelope. I'm so sorry. Miss Featherington? Mr Bridgerton, Lady Danbury said, with a surprising lack of sharpness in her voice. How nice to see you. He nodded, then looked at Penelope, wondering what she was thinking, and whether he'd be able to see it in her eyes. But whatever she was thinking, or feeling, it was hidden under a rather thick layer of nervousness. Or maybe the nervousness was all she was feeling. He couldn't really blame her. The way he'd stormed out of her drawing room without an explanation, she'd had to feel confused. And it was his experience that confusion invariably led to apprehension. Mr. Bridgerton, she finally murmured, her entire bearing scrupulously polite. He cleared his throat. How to extract her from Lady Danbury's clutches? He'd really rather not humble himself in front of the nosy old countess. I'd hoped, he began, intending to say that he'd hoped to have a private word with Penelope. Lady Danbury would be ferociously curious, but there was really no other course of action, and it would probably do her good to be left in the dark for once. But just as his hips were forming his query, he realized that something strange was afoot in the Macclesfield ballroom. People were whispering and pointing towards the small orchestra, whose members had recently laid their instruments down. Furthermore, neither Penelope nor Lady Danbury were paying him the least attention. What is everyone looking at? Colin asked. Lady Danbury didn't even bother looking back at him as she replied, Cressida Twombly has some sort of announcement. How annoying. He never liked Cressida. She'd been mean and petty when she was Cressida Cowper, and she was meaner and pettier as Cressida Twombly. But she was beautiful, and she was intelligent, in a rather cruel sort of way, and so she was still considered a leader in society circles. I can't imagine what she has to say that I'd want to listen to, Colin muttered. He spied Penelope trying to stifle a smile and flashed her an I caught you off guard sort of look. But it was the sort of I caught you look that also said, Can't imagine what she has to say that I'd want to listen to, Colin muttered. He spied Penelope trying to stifle a smile and flashed her I caught you sort of look. But it was the sort of I caught you look that also said, and I agree completely. Good evening, came the loud voice of Earl Macclesfield. Good evening to you, replied some drunken fool in the back. Colin twisted to see who it was, but the crowd had grown too thick. The Earl spoke some more, then Cressida opened her mouth, at which point Colin ceased paying attention. Whatever Cressida had to say, it wasn't going to help him solve his main problem. Figuring out exactly how he was going to apologize to Penelope. He tried rehearsing the words in his mind, but they never sounded quite right. And so, he was hoping his famously glib tongue would lead him in the right direction when the time came. Surely she'd understand. Whistle down! Colin only caught the last word of Cressida's monologue, but there was no way he could have missed the massive collective indrawn breath that swept the ballroom, followed by the flurry of harsh, urgent whispers one generally only hears after someone is caught in a very embarrassing, very public compromising position. What? He blurted out, turning to Penelope, who'd gone white as a sheet. "What did she say?" But Penelope was speechless. He looked to Lady Danbury, but the old lady had her hand over her mouth, and looked as if she might possibly swoon, which was somewhat alarming, as Colin would have bet large sums of money that Lady Danbury had never once swooned in all her 70-odd years. "What?" he demanded again, hoping one of them would break free of her stupor. "It can't be true," Lady Danbury finally whispered, her mouth slack even as she spoke the words. "I don't believe it." "What?" She pointed towards Cressida. People are being loud outside. She pointed towards Cressida, her extended index finger quivering in the flickering candlelight. "That lady is not Lady Whistledown." Colin's head snapped back and forth, to Cressida, to Lady Danbury, to Cressida, to Penelope. "She's Lady Whistledown?" he finally blurted out. "So she says," Lady Danbury replied, doubt written all over her face. Colin tended to agree with her. Cressida Twombly was the last person he'd have pegged as Lady Whistledown. She was smart, there was no denying that, but she wasn't clever, and she wasn't terribly witty unless she was poking fun at others. Lady Whistledown had a rather cutting sense of humor, but with the exception of her infamous comments on fashion, she never seemed to pick on less popular members of society. When all was said and done, Colin had to say that Lady Whistledown had a rather good taste in people. "I can't believe this," Lady Danbury said with a loud snort of disgust. "If I dreamed this would happen, I would have never made that beastly challenge." "This is horrible," Penelope whispered. Her voice was quivering, and it made Colin uneasy. "Are you all right?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, I don't think I am. I feel rather ill, actually." "Do you want to leave?" Penelope shook her head again. "But I'll sit right here if you don't mind." "Of course," he said, keeping a concerned eye on her. She was still terribly pale. "Oh, for the love of—" Lady Danbury blasphemed, which took Colin by surprise. But then she actually swore, which he thought might very well have tilted the planet on its axis. "Lady Danbury?" he asked, gaping. "She's coming this way," she muttered, jerking her head to the right. I should have known I'd not escape." Colin looked to his left. Cressida was trying to make her way through the crowd, presumably to confront Lady Danbury and collect her prize. She was, naturally, being accosted at every turn by fellow party-goers. She seemed to be reveling in the attention. No big surprise there. Cressida had always reveled in attention. But she'd also seemed rather determined to reach Lady Danbury's side. There's no way to avoid her, I'm afraid," Colin said to Lady Danbury. "I know," she grumbled. "I've been trying to avoid her for years, and I've never succeeded. I thought I was so clever." She looked to Colin, shaking her head in disgust. "I thought it would be such fun to root out Lady Whistledown." Root out Lady Whistledown. Well, it was fun," Colin said, not really meaning it. Lady Danbury jabbed him in the leg with her cane. "It's not the least bit fun, you foolish boy. Now look what I have to do." She waved her cane towards Cressida, who was drawing ever closer. "I never dreamed I'd have to deal with the likes of her." "Lady Danbury," Cressida said, swishing to a stop in front of her. "How nice to see you." Lady Danbury had never been known for her pleasantries, but even she outdid herself by skipping any pretense of a greeting before snapping. "I suppose you're here to try and collect your money." Cressida cocked her head to the side in a very pretty, very practised manner. "You did say you would give £1,000 to whomever unmasked Lady Whistledown," she shrugged, lifting her hands in the air, then twisting them gracefully until her palms were in a gesture of false humility. "You never stipulated that I couldn't unmask myself." Lady Danbury rose to her feet, narrowed her eyes, and said, "I don't believe it's you." Colin liked to think that he was rather suave and unflappable, but even he gasped at that. Cressida's blue eyes blazed in fury, and she Cressida's blue eyes blazed in fury, but she quickly regained control of her emotions and said, "I would be shocked if you did not have a degree of skepticism, Lady Danbury. After all, it is not your way to be trusting and gentle." Lady Danbury smiled. Well, perhaps not a smile, but her lips did move. "I shall take that as a compliment," she said, "and allow you to tell me that you meant it as such." Colin watched the stalemate with interest, and with a growing sense of alarm, until Lady Danbury turned quite suddenly to Penelope, who had risen to her feet mere seconds after she had. "What do you think, Miss Featherington?" Lady Danbury asked. Penelope visibly started, her entire body jerking slightly, as she stammered, "What? I beg your pardon?" "What do you think?" Lady Danbury persisted. "Is Lady Twombly Lady Whistledown?" I'm sure I don't know." "Oh, come now, Miss Featherington." Lady Danbury planted her hands on her hips and looked at Penelope with an expression that bordered on exasperation. "Surely you have an opinion on the matter." Colin felt himself stepping forward. Lady Danbury had no right to speak to Penelope in such a manner, and furthermore, he didn't like the expression on Penelope's face. She looked trapped, like a fox in a hunt, her eyes darting to him with a panic he'd never seen before. He'd seen Penelope uncomfortable, and he'd seen her pained, but he'd never seen her truly panicked. And then it occurred to him. She hated being the center of attention. She might poke fun at her status as a wallflower and a spinster, but she'd probably have liked a little more attention from society. But this kind of attention, with everyone staring at her and awaiting the merest words from her lips, she was miserable. "Miss Featherington," Colin said smoothly, moving to her side, "you look unwell. Would you like to leave?" "Yes," she said, but then something strange happened. She changed. He didn't know how else to describe it. She simply changed. Right there in the Macclesfield ballroom, by his side, Penelope Featherington became someone else. Her spine stiffened, and she could hear the heat from her body. Her spine stiffened, and he could swear the heat from her body increased. And she said, "No, no, I have something to say." Lady Danbury smiled. Penelope looked straight at the old countess and said, "I don't think she's Lady Whistledown. I think she's lying." Colin instinctively pulled Penelope a little closer to his side. Cressida looked as if she might go for her throat. "I've always liked Lady Whistledown," Penelope said, her chin rising until her bearing was almost regal. She looked to Cressida, and their eyes caught as she added, "And it would break my heart if she turned out to be someone like Lady Twombly." Colin took her hand and squeezed it. He couldn't help himself. "Well said, Miss Featherington!" Lady Danbury exclaimed, clapping her hands together in delight. "That is exactly what I was thinking, and I couldn't find the words." She turned to Colin with a smile. "She's very clever, you know." "I know," he replied, a strange new pride brimming within him. "Most people don't notice it," Lady Danbury said, twisting so that her words were directed to, probably only heard by, Colin. "I know," he murmured, "but I do." He said with a smile at Lady. He had to smile at Lady Danbury's behaviour, which he was certain was chosen in part to annoy the devil out of Cressida, who did not like to be ignored. "I will not be insulted by that nothing," Cressida fumed. She turned to Penelope with a seething glare and hissed, "I demand an apology." Penelope just nodded and slowly said, "That is your prerogative." And then she said nothing more. Colin had to physically wipe the smile from his face. Cressida clearly wanted to say more, and perhaps commit an act of violence while she was at it, but she held back, presumably because it was obvious that Penelope was among friends. She had always been renowned for her poise, however, and thus she'd always been renowned for her poise, however, and thus Colin was not surprised when she composed herself, turned to Lady Danbury, and said, "What do you plan to do about the £1,000?" Lady Danbury looked at her for the longest second Colin had ever endured. Then she turned to him. Dear God, the last thing he wanted was to get involved in this disaster, and asked, "And what do you think, Mr. Bridgerton? Is our Lady Twombly telling the truth?" Colin gave her a practiced smile. "You must be mad if you think I'm going to offer an opinion." "You're a surprisingly wise man, Mr. Bridgerton," Lady Danbury said approvingly. He nodded modestly, then ruined the effect by saying, "I pride myself on it." But what the hell? It wasn't every day a man was called wise by Lady Danbury. Most of her adjectives, after all, were of the decidedly negative variety. Cressida didn't even bother to bat her eyelashes at him, as Colin had already reflected. She wasn't stupid, just mean, and after a dozen years out in society, she had to know that he didn't much like her, and certainly wasn't about to fall prey to her charms. Instead, she looked squarely at Lady Danbury and kept her voice evenly modulated as she asked, "What shall we do now, my lady?" Lady Danbury's lips pursed together until she almost appeared mouthless, and she said, "I need proof." Cressida blinked. "I beg your pardon?" "Proof!" Lady Danbury's cane slammed against the floor with a remarkable force. "Which letter in the word did you not understand? I'm not handing over a king's ransom without proof." £1,000 is hardly a king's ransom, Cressida said, her expression growing petulant. Lady Danbury's eyes narrowed. "Then why are you so keen to get it?" Cressida was silent for a moment, but there was a tightness in everything about her. Her stance, her posture, the line of her jaw. Everyone knew that her husband had left her in bad financial straits, but this was the first time anyone had hinted at such to her face. "Get me my proof," Lady Danbury said, "and I'll give you the money." "Are you saying," Cressida said, and even as he despised her, Colin was forced to admire her ability to keep her voice even, "that my word is not good enough?" "That is precisely what I'm saying," Lady Danbury barked. Good God, girl! You don't get to be my age without being allowed to insult anyone you please." Colin thought he heard Penelope choking, but when he stole a glance at her, there she was at his side, avidly watching the exchange. Her brown eyes were huge and luminous in her face, and she'd regained most of the color she'd lost when Cressida had made her unexpected announcement. In fact, now Penelope looked positively intrigued by the goings-on. "Fine," Cressida said, her voice low and deadly. "I will bring you proof in a fortnight's time." "What sort of proof?" Colin asked, then mentally kicked himself. The last thing he wanted to do was embroil himself in this mess. But his curiosity had gotten the better of him. Cressida turned to him, her face remarkably placid, considering the insult she'd just been dealt by Lady Danbury before countless witnesses. "You shall know it when I deliver it," she told him archly. And then she held out her arm, waiting for one of her minions to take it and lead her away. Which was really quite amazing, because a young man, a besotted fool from all appearances, materialized at her side as if she'd conjured him by the mere tilt of her arm. A moment later, they were gone. "Well," Lady Danbury said, after everyone had stood in reflective, or maybe stunned, silence for nearly a minute, "that was unpleasant." "I never liked her," Colin said, to no one in particular. A small crowd had gathered around them, so his words were heard by more than Penelope and Lady Danbury, but he didn't much care. "Colin!" He turned to see Hyacinth skidding through the crowd, dragging along Felicity Featherington as she barreled to his side. "What did she say?" Hyacinth asked breathlessly. "We tried to get here sooner, but there's been such a crush." She said exactly what you would have expected her to say," he replied. Hyacinth pulled a face. "Men are never good for gossip. I want exact words." "It's very interesting," Penelope said suddenly. Something about the thoughtful tone of her voice demanded attention, and in seconds the entire crowd had quieted. "Speak up," Lady Danbury instructed. "We're all listening." Colin expected such a demand to make Penelope uncomfortable, but whatever silent infusion of confidence she'd experienced a few minutes earlier was still with her, because she stood straight and proud and said, "Why would someone reveal herself as Lady Whistledown?" "For the money, of course," Hyacinth said. Penelope shook her head. "Yes, but you'd think that Lady Whistledown would be quite wealthy by now. We've been paying for her paper for years." "By God, she's right!" Lady Danbury exclaimed. "Perhaps Cressida merely sought attention," Cullen suggested. It wasn't such an unbelievable hypothesis. Cressida had spent the bulk of her adult life trying to place herself at the center of attention. "I'd thought of that," Penelope allowed. "But does she really want this sort of attention? Lady Whistledown has insulted quite a few people over the years." "No one who means anything to me," Colin joked. Then, when it became obvious that his companions required explanation, he added, "Haven't you all noticed that Lady Whistledown only insults the people who need insulting?" Penelope cleared her throat delicately. I have been referred to as an overripe citrus fruit." He waved off her concern. "Except for the bits about fashion, of course." Penelope must have decided not to pursue the matter any further, because all she did was give Colin a long, assessing stare before turning back to Lady Danbury and saying, "Lady Whistledown has no motive to reveal herself. Cressida obviously does." Lady Danbury beamed. Then all at once her face scrunched into a frown. "I suppose I'll have to give her the fortnight to come up with her proof. Fair play and all that. I, for one, will be very interested to see what she comes up with," Hyacinth put in. She turned to Penelope and added, "I say, you're very clever. Did you know that?" Penelope blushed modestly. Then she turned to her sister and said, "We must be going, Felicity." "So soon?" Felicity asked, and to his horror, Colin realized that he'd mouthed the very same words. "Mother wanted us home early," Penelope said. Felicity looked truly perplexed. "She did?" "She did," Penelope said emphatically. "And besides that, I'm not feeling well." Felicity nodded glumly. Did I say facility? Felicity nodded glumly. "I shall instruct a footman to see that her carriage is brought around." "No, you stay," Penelope said, placing a hand on her sister's arm. "I will see to it." "I will see to it," Colin announced. Really, what was the use of being a gentleman when ladies insisted upon doing things for themselves? And then, before he even realized what he was doing, he'd facilitated Penelope's departure, and she left the scene without his ever having apologized to her. He supposed he should have deemed the evening a failure, for that reason alone, but in truth he couldn't quite bring himself to do so. After all, he'd spent the better part of 5 minutes holding her hand. Screaming, 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 crying, throwing up. He's not mad about the evening not going to plan because he got to hold her hand. Are you kidding me? Like, are you actually joking? Ugh. Do we think that show Colin had those same thoughts when he grabbed Penelope's hand and led her to the drawing room to tell her, "There's no gemstone mines in Georgia. There's no gemstone mines in Georgia, Penelope." It's like, I'm screaming. Yeah, I need this moment or something similar. I 100% agree, Haley. The hand holding being an everyday thing for them in the show at this point. Yes, but in my recollection, Penelope has never been, which she probably was wearing gloves in this, but Penelope has never been gloveless holding his hand. And the first time we see them, like, her actually like touch him like gloveless is in the still of her like fixing his hand up, which has me so gooped and gagged. So it's like every time he touches her, even if he touches his bare skin, he's instigating it. He's touching like the space between her like shirt and her glove, like, and I'm like, is that a Luke Newton thing or is that like a Colin choice? Like, I'll take both. But yeah, love the last sentence talking about holding her hand. That's how I knew their season was coming. I love a hand hold. I love a hand moment, like the hand flex in Pride and Prejudice. Like, I'm so there. He better have thought that. I hope so too. He better be having thoughts. Like, I want this man to be thinking about Penelope on the daily. Um, I want her to live in his brain. I want her to burrow into him and him into her. I'll leave it at that. Um, yeah, I can't wait to see them like interact and be actually like courting, and I hope we get like a touch of courting. Like, there's obviously going to be, we want Farrell Colin need so real. There's obviously going to be like them doing courting things, but like under the my face is so dry, under the guise of the lessons. I want there to be like Colin actually courting her though, even if she's like not super apprised by it. Like, I need it. Like, I truly do. I'm putting on moisturizer. Yeah, but I need him to be feral. I need him to buy out the flower shop. I need him to get her stacks on stacks of fine paper and quills, and maybe he gets her a journal or an empty journal for her to write her novel or to, to whistle down notes. Like, I need him to court her. Do you think they'll be around each other more at dances, or do you think they will keep distance? I think pre-suitor, but like, okay, let me. Season starts, right? Penn is not talking to Colin. He gets Mr. Bridgerton. He offers to do the courting lessons. They've done like one or two lessons. It's the first ball. He's going to be around a lot. But then once she starts having suitors, it's going to be like, Colin, you can't be around as much because you're going to scare off the men. And that's going to be, like, I think hard for him. But I think that might be how it goes. Yeah, if he's around her all the time, what guy will come around? Hey, we know Mr. Debling, Lord Debling, first name unknown Debling, is supposed to be eccentric. Maybe he likes that Colin's around. Maybe he's hoping Colin will be a third. Hey, I would also like to be the meat in that sandwich, but it's neither here nor there. Don't quote me on that, but that is the truth. I like didn't realize how dry my skin was until right now. Like, this is horrible. But yeah, I'm so excited for season 3. I'm excited for reading the next 2 chapters, which I won't be doing tonight. Maybe Colin will dance with her during those suitor lines so they can talk. Ooh, like in between, like he's like dances with suitor, dance with Colin, dance with suitor, dance with Colin, and then like he ends up dancing with her like 5 times. They're like, "Hey, King, you can't do that," and he's like, "Well, I don't care." But here's the thing. Here's the thing that you didn't know. I don't care. I want him to be just like slightly, just like out of pocket. Like, I want people to be like, hey, just so you know, like, this thing you're doing is being perceived by the Ton in like a silly goose way. And he's like, cool, don't care. I'm going to keep holding Penn's hand. Like, that literally doesn't matter to me. But then when like Penn says it, when she's like, you're ruining this for me, and it's like affecting Penn, then he's like, okay, like, I'm sorry. Didn't mean it. He did mean it, but that's fine. Colin loses all senses of propriety around Penn, lol. 100%, 110%. I Do you know how much of like uninterrupted eye contact these two have? I'm like, that's 21st century flirting. Like, that's how I flirt with people in the club. I'm like, give them like a, I have my false lashes on. I'm waving them to and fro. That's how I flirt in the 21st century. That's so out of pocket for 1800s. Like, what do you mean? If you watch the scenes where they get caught in those moments of like staring at each other, like the purpose scene and the what a barb scene and the, you know, Uh, there's other times too when they're just like staring at each other. It is always Penn who breaks the eye contact. Like Colin will keep staring. Oh, and in the new scene where she's like, "Your eyes are the most remarkable shade of blue, but somehow they're even brighter when you are past." When during that scene, she's the one again to break eye contact. Like I truly believe if Penn just kept fucking looking at him, they would have kissed a long time ago. Like I truly believe if she didn't break the eye contact out of like nerves or out of like, oh my god, wait, like he's looking at me, then they would have kissed season 1. 100%. He would have started just leaning in. I'm hoping she does him like he did her, pushing him to in the friend zone. Yeah. Well, she has no reason to think otherwise until he gives her a reason to be like, oh, he's like courting me. Oh, he's like actually wants me, and oh, he actually deserves me. Like he needs to put in some work. I want him to elaborate on if he realizes. Oh, oops, lost it. I want him to elaborate on if he realizes how much propriety escapes him around Penn. Oh, I want them to elaborate. I want someone to just be like, King, like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, if, like, Eloise walked in on them, like, alone in a room, and they truly were just being, like, having a lesson, or, like, not even about to kiss, and she was just like, what are you doing? Like, do you not think that this is a problem? Like, I want someone who's not gonna force them into marriage, even though, make them get married. Like, I'm in. I want someone who's not gonna force them into marriage to like catch his ass and be like, "Do you realize what you're doing? Because this is like not allowed." Oh, the way I need her to say, "You do not count. You are my friend, Rana. You are so real." That is such a good idea. I want her to throw his words back in her face, even just like, "Are you mad? I would never, I would never entertain Colin Bridgerton's suit, like something like that." Do you think there will be a confrontation between Colin and Debling, like a chat fight? I want Debling to be like the most like mild mannered, easygoing. Danny. Okay, sorry. I want Colin. Uh, I want Colin to just be like clawing at the cage, like the walls of his enclosure, like trying to find something wrong with Debling, trying to fight the guy, trying to like make him get angry. And Debling's just like the most mild mannered, chill dude ever. And he's just like, oh, like you and Penn are great friends. Like, that's so nice. Like, even though me and Penn are going to be living in the country or whatever is the caveat for like how great Debling is. Like, I kind of want Colin to be like trying to fight Debling, and Debling's just like trying to be pals and just being like so chill. But I want jealous Colin for sure. Like, there's not a moment that they're in each other's presence that they are respecting propriety. No, they don't get it. It's like Penn. Uh, Colin doesn't respect propriety. Penn, hey, she's trying to get smooched, so we're gonna we're gonna say it's okay. I have never seen Bridget Jones. Scandal. Um, but yeah. Oh, I think people are yelling. Not my problem. Not my problem. Um, Rose, I see that you see what I see. Um, at this point. But yeah, I'm so excited. Bridget Jones is good. I've heard good things. Rose, I feel like we've talked about this before. That I haven't seen Bridget Jones. I've also not seen Gossip Girl. As I've also there's so many things that I haven't seen. Um, what time will you read tomorrow? I was gonna maybe pick up a shift tomorrow, but the next reading is the carriage scene. I'm so poor. You guys, I'm so poor. I should just pick up the shift, but I don't want to. I want to read my little book with my friends online. Can we get a vote? Can we get a vote of if I should pick up a shift or if I should just read tomorrow? I don't want to pick up the shift though. Is the thing. Okay, so I'll probably read tomorrow. Is 9 o'clock good for everyone? Oh, okay, well, I want to go to the club on Saturday. Crystal is the thing. Like, I'm trying to go to the club. Um, I already picked up 2 shifts next week, so I'm like, it'll be fine. I'll cope. I cannot read 12 tonight. I can't. Because the part that we actually want to read doesn't actually happen until 13, and I'm not gonna leave you guys with Cerulean Clit. Like, I can't do that to you. Um, you know what? Girl, you know what way we would vote. I was gonna say, but everyone is supporting me as a woman to my right to work, and I appreciate that. I'm not gonna pick up the shift. So I'll read tomorrow at 9. Is 9 good for 9 Eastern Standard Time, the time that I usually start? Is that good for everyone? If not, I'm working on getting all of the lives on YouTube, but it's still going because they're like 2 hours long. Yeah, but you guys, okay, so tomorrow I will do it tomorrow now. That's decided. Um, Tomorrow we have like the lead up. Ooh, I just saw a sentence that got me for pussy throb. I don't know if I'm allowed to curse on here, but I'm gonna do it. I need to pluck my eyebrows before I get back on here. Because what if Luke and or Nicola were to pop in and I've just got my brows all willy nilly? Yeah, chapter 13. Hold on. I was flipping through. Oh, yeah, okay. So, chapter 12 to chapter 13, that's like almost 40 pages. I'm excited. I'm excited. There was a question before I made you guys start voting about if I should work. um, what do you think was said before the remarkable shade of blue scene? Like, what did he say to prompt it? I think maybe it was like in the look of the lesson, and he was like, oh, like in order to pull a suitor's attention, like pick out something about them and like compliment it. And then like Miss Gurley like went in and was like, your eyes. Her voice 2 octaves lower than he's ever heard it. Her cootie throbbing like, your eyes are the most remarkable shade of blue. Yet somehow they're brighter than your kind. Yeah, work-life balance. I'm just poor because I took a week off. That is my own. Actually, it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. I was given a week off and I decided to keep it. Colin is gonna be mad about Lady Whistledown, and 5 minutes later he's lashed out to bed like a newborn baby. Yeah, hey, as would I. Could you imagine if mom and dad randomly dropped in here? I think I would actually shit my pants. And that's like not a joke. That's not me being silly. That's not me being like whatever. That's me actually saying the live would end because I have shat upon myself if Luke and or Nicola was here. And if you're here on a spam account, don't tell me. That's not my business. Don't perceive me. I won't be able to handle it. I had a. This is just personal lore. If you have more chat thoughts, questions about Bridgerton, please send them in. Um, but I was obsessed with a celebrity for 6 years, like 6 years. And I saw him in real life and I yelled, no fucking way, and turned around and stomped away and I did not speak to him. And then my obsession immediately ended. And then I found Bridgerton. Aaron, if you are one of them, like so much support and love to you, don't tell me because I won't be able to. I can't emotionally. I can't do it unless you want to kiss. Then you can call me. You can call me on my personal number. That's not even a reference to anything. That's just me doing an accent for no fucking reason. Anyway, yeah. I'm just feeling silly goose now. I'm not, I promise. I wish, but no. But hey, if you were them, then you can't kiss them. Can't be besties with them. So feel happy to be yourself. Feel blessed to be who you are. Very exciting. Did you meet Luke after his play? No. No, I didn't. I didn't. Um, I did have. I don't want to talk about it. You guys, honestly, I don't want to talk about it. I had the opportunity to meet him. Um, he saw me like standing and waiting. He said, "Hi, how are you?" I said, "Good," and I turned and I walked away. And that was the second time I walked away from a celebrity crush. Anyone going to try and meet them at their fan events? I'm in a city where it's possible. I'd probably try to catch them on like a show rather than like a fan event. Or just be like, "Oh my god, wait." Run into them at the best, you know, restaurant in the city, get on Raya, whatever. Um, I don't know if they're single right now, but honestly, let's all be honest. Hey, you guys, I'm not going to reveal my age, but I'm going to reveal this fun fact about myself. Even if they were on regular Tinder, I do have men and women on both my Tinder. Hey, support the gays, are the gays, whatever. My age range isn't high enough for even if they were on regular person Tinder to see them. So even if they're single on regular person Twitter, my age range, just based on my age and their ages, is too low. So unless we have a meet cute somewhere, I don't think I'm gonna be matching with them anytime soon. But yeah. One time I saw a guy that looked vaguely like Luke, and did we match? Yes, we did. I was like, that means Luke would want to kiss me. That was out of pocket. Hey, cut that, reverse it. Didn't say it. Hold on one fucking second. I'm gonna turn this to the ceiling. Hey, do you guys have a problem? Okay, you're good? Sorry, I heard knocking, so I just wanted to make sure. Okay. The children are in the halls. Don't ask me any further questions about it. Yeah, but I'm very excited for the season. I'm very excited for the next read, which will be tomorrow, which I believe is Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we will read chapters 12 and 13. Here, maybe I'll draw a little picture of a carriage so we all know. What does a carriage look like? Someone put a carriage emoji. Do we have one of those? Yes, we do, because Nicola put it. Oh, maybe I'll just put a carriage emoji. That's also possible. Okay, here, I'll write it out now so we have it ready for tomorrow. I'm very excited. Hey, you guys, tomorrow, if I blush, if I stumble upon my words, leave me alone. I'm gonna be embarrassed. Because sometimes people I know in real life who don't even watch Bridgerton but know me see the lives. And if they catch me reading this porn, I'm not gonna be able to handle it. Chapter 12. And when I just talked to those kids in the hallway, did I sound like a bitch? I feel like I probably did. But it's fine. Don't be loud in the hallways. It's nighttime. They have about 45 seconds before I actually go yell at them. Okay, chapter 12 and chapter 13. Okay. I need a little carriage emoji. Okay, good. Hey, if I be a little bit mean, that's okay too. I'm fine with that. I am fine with that. Add text. Let's see. Let's check our emoji keyboard. I need a carriage for tomorrow. Can you guys hear them, or is it just my ears? Where would it be? Do we think people would get the joke if I put like a scooter instead of a carriage? I don't think we have one. Should I put an anchor? Because hopefully Colin's going down. I'm choosing the most carriage-ish emoji, and I need no one to, when you see it, no one judge me. What the fuck is happening? Hey, never mind. Never mind to any of this. This isn't working out. I'm just gonna slide it off the screen, I think. Hey, Rana, you're so real. Oh, maybe a pumpkin. Okay, smart. Uh, yeah, I'll put an eggplant. I'll put an eggplant. Maybe I'll draw an eggplant. It's not gonna be good. What we doing? I'm drawing an eggplant so we know what we're getting into tomorrow. Ain't that right? I wish. What the fuck? Sorry. With a little hat. Yeah. If you know, you know. The children amongst the hallways are being really loud. Okay, let me duplicate this. So it's perfectly symmetrical, even though we know most eggplants aren't. But that's okay. We love them anyway. Do we prefer them? Hey, to each their own. But paste. No. Okay. Little eggplant. I need to give it a green little hat. And then after I draw my eggplant, I'll show you. Ooh, a horse emoji. Rana, you're smart. You're smart. Okay. Copy. Paste. Hee hee hee. And a horse emoji. Add text. Well, people think it's like horse eggplant, though. Rana, you just got my. Yeah. Let's just leave it with eggplant. Should we do eggplant or should we do horse? There's two options. Because it cannot be both. Really, truly cannot be both. Eggplant. 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 Okay. I think eggplant is like a universal sign. Like, we all know what that means. Okay, so here it is. It's backwards because I have to flip it tomorrow. But yeah, my little eggplants. Hand drawn by me. Share. Save. Slay. She's an artiste. Oh, actually, let's see. LOL, if you actually want to see me being an artiste, this is the last thing I actually tried to draw, and I think that tells you a lot about myself. Because that picture, wow, changed my brain chem. She's an artist. She truly is. Like, yeah, that picture really changed me as a person. Changed me as a person. Changed me as a person. I've been changed as a person. Um, Let me tell you, hey, were you guys there? Were you there when we weren't sure what he looked like shirtless? Like, were you in the fandom in that era? Do you remember that? When there was like only the picture of him like in the jacuzzi where you saw like one nipple and it looked like wonky as fuck? And we were all like, I don't, hey, we're giving him the benefit of the doubt, but we don't know what it's gonna be like. I was worried. Like, I was scared. And then these pictures dropped, and hey, I the first hey, you guys, hey, this is going to tell you a lot about myself. The first time I lived in a flat with 9 people, right? I was living in a flat with 9 people. Um, I was sitting and just like on my Discord, probably writing fanfic at the time. I don't really write fanfic anymore, but I was doing it so then. And we were all just like, yeah, like he looks like he's like built, like we don't really know. When the first pictures dropped where like it's obvious they tilted their fucking phone on self timer on like a Corona bottle at whatever him and his friends were like on vacation, and it's obvious instead of asking like a pool attendant to take the picture, they tilted their phone on self timer on a Corona bottle, and his like little tootsies were in it, and I was like, I don't need to see toes, but that's fine. The gasp that I gasped, number one, and number two, my one of my roommates came in directly after, and she was aware of my hyperfixation upon Bridgerton, and I said, "Come here," and I showed her the picture, and she was like, she likes beefy men, so it was great. But yeah, I need myself a Shondaland glow up. True. Or I just need to be cast in a Shondaland show because then I'll get a hot love interest. And that's how I will find my future partner. I need one. I need a new one. That's for sure. I'm ready for a new one. Cuz I just like unfortunately you guys, I hate to say it, I don't think me and Luke are going to work out as is now. Like the distance has been really hard on us. Um it's been really, really hard. But yeah, no, I'm ready to be in a Shondaland production. This is what tomorrow's gonna. Oh, no, don't look at that. That's too much personal information. Don't look at my camera roll. This is for tomorrow. Don't get excited. It's for tomorrow. But there are my eggplant emojis. Even though I don't know if there's a lot of eggplant work in those chapters, but I don't know if it comes out. Maybe. Yeah, but tomorrow, get excited. Tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will be on, and it will be chapters 12 and 13, which is very. Maybe it should have been a hand. Yeah. Hey, it is there and it is known that it is there, but I don't know if it's an active participant. I think that's where I'm getting a little confused. But I need to go yell at some kids in the hallway, so I'm gonna end the live there tonight. Um, it's been so real. Love you so much. See you guys tomorrow at 9. I will make an event right now so you can see it on our profile. Which ones are your fix? That is a secret for me to know and you to never find out. Love you so much. Um, yeah. Have a good night, you guys. We'll see you tomorrow for very exciting chapters. Okay, bye. Maybe. End.